Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into the totally mesmerizing and honestly pretty unsettling world of the Moth Library. It's this fascinating narrative that completely forces us to face the ethical nightmares of archiving human trauma. I mean, just imagine an archive where books aren't made of paper or pixels. Instead, they are literally encoded into the wing scales of living, breathing moths. It's a wildly creative concept, right? But as you'll see, it very quickly evolves into this massive, high-stakes battle over who actually gets to control the narrative of our darkest memories. To really understand how this bizarre ecology works, we have to look at its creator, St. Urus. This quote right here perfectly captures the library's whole foundational philosophy. In this archive, texts only survive if people genuinely want to read them. Urus absolutely despised traditional libraries. She basically called them tyrannies of preservation that just force-feed books way past their expiration date. Her take was radical but simple. If no one cares enough to read a text, just let it die. Let meaning be mortal. So the physical stakes of memory here, they're incredibly high. And this isn't just a metaphor, folks. When readers actually engage with a text, the moths carrying those words breed. They multiply and they secure that text against extinction. But if a book loses its readers, the moths literally stop reading. They physically decline. And the second that last moth dies, the text goes permanently extinct. There are no digital backups, no hidden archives. It is truly irreversibly gone forever. All right, let's get into it. Section 1, the final words of Finch. So we meet our main protagonist, who is this archivist named Lena Savick, right at the exact moment she gets a terrifying preservation request from a super wealthy individual named Yule Cerast. And this request is what sets up the whole core tension of our story. On one hand, you have this dying suicide note written by a 23-year-old named Finch. It's this desperate final cry for help that explicitly names Yule as the cause of their death. Finch literally writes, "You broke me because you're skilled." But then, on the other hand, you have Yule's totally chilling motivation for paying to preserve it. Yule straight up admits to Lena they have zero intention of ever reading the text again. No, they just want it immortalized as evidence, a permanent trophy, basically, of the psychological power and manipulation they held over Finch. Which brings us to Section 2, the trap of coercive control. You see, Finch's note actually documented a terrifying psychological breakdown. They detailed this dynamic they called the trap, and the tactics used against them were just surgical. We're talking about isolating Finch from friends, using this intermittent reinforcement to create trauma bonds, and basically dismantling their entire sense of reality piece by piece. Whenever Finch tried to leave or push back, Yule would flip it and frame Finch's completely normal reactions as mental instability. It's this calculated, devastating erosion of a person's autonomy, all completely disguised as love and concern. Let's move on to Section 3, building an archive of harm. So Lena, obviously realizing the extreme danger of Yule's request, decides to shift gears. She moves from just passive palliative care to actively protecting Finch's warning. She draws a hard ethical line, and she does it with the help of a master archivist named Tomas, who points out this massive loophole. Preserving a text for an abuser who explicitly refuses to read it, that violates the entire foundation of the library. As Tomas so brilliantly puts it, that's not ecology, that's taxidermy, right? It's not a living relationship with the text, it's just a twisted monument to power. So armed with that argument, Lena actually convinces the library council to restrict access to the note. She locks Yule out, keeping it safe for genuine researchers and survivors. But, as you might guess, Yule does not take this restriction lightly. The retaliation is absolutely swift and brutal. It starts kind of creepy. Wild, dead moths deliberately left on Lena's doorstep as a warning. But then it escalates into a literal physical attack where a predator is released right into Finch's restricted moth colony, violently tearing their wings apart. And it's this targeted violence that finally pushes Lena over the edge. She stops playing defense. She proactively puts out a call to build a comprehensive archive, actively hunting for other survivors of Yule's abuse. And the results of Lena's call? It's literally staggering. 11 different people independently came forward with nearly identical stories of systemic abuse by Yule. Survivors like Dev and River gave these incredibly detailed, heartbreaking testimonies of the exact same coercive control tactics that Finch had documented. At this point, the pattern isn't just a theory, it's undeniable. This takes us straight into Section 4, the myth of neutrality. So now the library has a huge problem. How does an institution dedicated to open information handle targeted systemic harm? Because Yule aggressively protests this new archive, demanding the right to encode defensive rebuttals to every single survivor testimony. This sparks a massive internal clash. You've got the Library Council, led by Elder Vespa, arguing for process, basically claiming the library has to stay completely neutral and give equal space to all voices, treating Yule's denials with the exact same weight as the survivor's trauma. But Lena argues for protection. She insists that presenting a liar's words equally alongside a victim's with zero context is incredibly dangerous. Eventually, she forces a compromise. Yule's responses are added, but readers can only access the archive after completing rigorous educational modules on how to recognize psychological abuse. Now, the library justifies this pretty messy compromise through a warning from Lena's mentor, Calibri, who says, "Certainty is the enemy of wisdom." And it's a profound reminder, really. While Lena is absolutely 100% certain of Yule's guilt, a library's role isn't actually to be the judge or the jury. Its role is to hold the complexity, even the ugly, contradictory, and painful parts, so that readers are empowered to engage critically and sort of piece together the truth for themselves. And that sets the stage for our final act, Section 5, the trial for truth. Because Yule's retaliation doesn't magically stop at the library doors. They attempt to legally erase the entire archive by slamming Lena and the institution with a massive defamation lawsuit. This is your classic slap tactic, right? A strategic lawsuit against public participation. The goal isn't necessarily to win on legal merits. It's to force the library into submission, just through sheer financial exhaustion. The trial turns into this bitter, exhausting battleground. You got the fragile, traumatized memories of the survivors pitted directly against Yule's incredibly well-funded, charming, and calculated legal manipulation. During the trial, as Lena is up there defending her life's work, she arrives at this devastating realization. She declares to the court, neutrality between an abuser and their victims isn't neutrality, it's complicity. She realizes that when institutions try to play it perfectly down the middle in the face of systemic harm, they actually end up favoring the most powerful, resourced, and manipulative party. Sometimes, to truly preserve something, you have to actively protect it. So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this profound dilemma to chew on, because this story totally challenges everything we assume about how information, history, and trauma are preserved in our own real world. What is the actual cost of archival ethics? Does institutional neutrality protect the truth, or does it merely provide a convenient shield for the abuser? Thank you so much for exploring the Moth Library with me today, and I highly encourage you to keep questioning the narratives that are being preserved around you.